an article that has 1,000 words, technically all 1,000 words could have made it onto X somehow. And effectively, now you have this remarkable repository. And I wonder how you think about that, again, and how you think the creative community and those who were the original IP owners should think about that.
I don't know, except to say that by the time these lawsuits are decided, we'll have digital God. So ask digital God at that point. These lawsuits won't be decided before on a time frame that is relevant.
Hey guys, David Vos here. What a beautiful day. Oh boy, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Do you see how Elon Musk is squirming around like that? Like he can't get positioned. He's squirming around in his seat. I'm almost sure that is the effects of ketamine. It's a drug that the elite will use. It's a pharmaceutical drug. And it can cause two things, which I've seen him do when he's interviewed. And I've heard that he's on ketamine, but it can slow you down. And I've seen him, like when he was first on Joe Rogan, he was slow, very slow. And I thought, well, what is he, stupid or something? Is he a robot? He was on ketamine, I'll just about guarantee you. And the way he's fidgeting around right there, he's on something. And ketamine can do that to you as well, make you restless and move around. But anyway, I wanted you to watch this, and there's a little bit more to this. And then we got to talk about some things here. This digital God thing.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think we live, there's that, I don't know if it's actually a real Chinese saying or not, but may you live in interesting times, right? It's apparently not a good thing. I would prefer to live in interesting times. And we live in the most interesting of times. I think, for a while there, I was like really getting demotivated and losing sleep over the threat of AI danger. And then I finally sort of became fatalistic about it and said, well, even if I knew annihilation was certain, would I choose to be alive at that time or not? And I said I probably would choose to be alive at that time because it's the most interesting thing, even if there's nothing I could do about it. So then basically sort of a fatalistic resignation helped me sleep at night. Yes. I mean, the reason OpenAI exists at all is that Larry Page and I used to be close friends, and I would stay at his house in Palo Alto, and I would talk to him late into the night about AI safety. And at least my perception was that Larry was not taking AI safety seriously enough.
What did he say about it?
He really seemed to be one sort of digital superintelligence, basically digital God, if you will, as soon as possible.
He wanted that?
Yes. He's made many public statements over the years that the whole goal of Google is what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, or artificial superintelligence. And I agree with him that there's great potential for good, but there's also potential for bad. And so if you've got some radical new technology, you want to try to take a set of actions that maximize the probability it will do good and minimize the probability it will do bad things.
Yes.
It can't just be hell for leather. It's just go, barreling forward and, hope for the best. And then at one point, I said, well, what about, we're going to make sure humanity's okay here. And then he called me a speciesist.
Did he use that term?
Yes. And there were witnesses. I wasn't the only one there when he called me a speciesist. And so I was like, okay, that's it. Yes, I'm a speciesist. Okay. You got me. What are you? Yeah, I'm fully a speciesist. Busted. So that was the last straw. At the time, Google had acquired DeepMind, and so Google and DeepMind together had about 3/4 of all the AI talent in the world. They obviously had a tremendous amount of money.
Oh my goodness. Well, guys, today I want to tediously go over some very technical information. It might not be for everybody, but if you can wade through all this information, you're going to find out what's really going on in our world from one aspect that we don't cover every day. But I want to point out that I will give you a way to look at this so you'll be able to see more clearly what's going on that they don't want you to see. One is that Elon Musk himself may be orchestrating either all of it or a great portion of what's going on. Notice that Elon Musk was the founder or co-founder of PayPal. And he was co-founder with Peter Thiel. Well, now, supposedly the story is that they had an argument and Elon backs out. Well, isn't it interesting that whenever he backs out of a company and they tell him to leave, that he's already founded a company, then he ends up leaving and they take over. It ends up becoming this huge, it's almost like PayPal is the bank now. They won't need ordinary banks. You won't have to go to a location. You just go on an app. And so people go on to PayPal. So supposedly has nothing to do with it. But then there's this Peter Thiel who then ends up making Palantir and other things that are really important, integral parts of the whole surveillance system. So I believe that Peter Thiel, who's now his own billionaire in his own right, works for Elon Musk. Even before Elon Musk had all this money. Somehow or another, and by the way, I don't know if you remember, I told you guys months and months ago, I looked up Elon Musk's dad, Errol, and asked what he was worth, and they said he was worth something like $400 billion or something. And that was years, at least a year or two ago. I don't remember. And I'm like, what? I thought only his son had that kind of money. I didn't know his dad had that kind of money. Now, if you look it up now, they won't tell you that. They say he don't have any money. He's only got a few million or something. Maybe 100 million. I don't know what he's got, but nothing like billions. And something like 400 billion. So, according to what AI told me that day, Errol Musk was one of the richest men in the world, maybe richer than his son. I didn't go into finding out just how rich, but I do remember it was about $400 billion. So now that could have been an error or that could have been the truth. I don't know how Elon got into all of this power broking, before he had all this money. And, recently he's crossed the line. He's now a trillionaire, the very first trillionaire. Last time I looked, he only had like 400 billion. Now he's a trillionaire. Now think about that. Don't you think that's something that probably the world should have been updated on? Somebody should know that. Very few people even know it. Just happened one day. He crossed the line. Now he's a trillionaire and nobody even seems to talk about it. They're not really interested in letting you know just how rich this man is. And I don't know if I'm sure most of you know just how big $1 trillion is. It's like way bigger than anybody else that's got any money. So then here he is, he's talking about OpenAI. He says that's the only reason it exists because he created OpenAI along with Altman and stuff. Well, now he's not a part of it. They threw him out and he goes and starts his own business, I think he opened a lot of these companies, started them up, and then pretends that they threw him out. I think the people that are running these other companies, the people that run OpenAI, are that Altman guy that I guess co-founded it with Elon, but Altman doesn't really have any shares in the company or any money. He's just the CEO. So I really think Altman literally works for Elon Musk. And then Peter Thiel was one of the co-founders. So again, I think he works for Elon Musk. Greg Brockman, who was, I think, the founder of Stripe, which is a big conglomerate company or something. But what that means to me is that Elon was really the boss of Peter Thiel. He's Reid Hoffman's boss. So therefore, Elon is literally invested in Facebook, Stripe, PayPal, Palantir, all these companies. Somehow or another, they all work for Elon. Because there's got to be a reason that Elon goes in, starts up a company, and then gets out, and his guy, Peter Thiel, stays on. So this way, it looks like Elon Musk doesn't own all of these companies. But I think he has some kind of controlling interest in all of it. And by the way, Microsoft now ends up buying out OpenAI, and I guarantee that Elon Musk is literally in cahoots with the Bill Gates of Microsoft, and because they're all involved, and you'll see as we go along today, and they're all involved with some plot with Trump and AI. It's all involved with this X, and we're going to talk about the X and where the X came from, because all the companies that have the X is the foundational mark of the beast system. So in order to figure that out, we're going to have to find out who started it, and that we will find is Elon Musk. So first of all, who is Elon Musk? Elon Musk seems to be in charge. He is now a trillionaire. I never really actually thought that that would be possible. He started off with Thiel. He created OpenAI and then gave it up again, just like he did PayPal. PayPal merged with eBay. You know, a lot of people discount eBay. It's like Amazon. It's huge. And it's a network where you can buy and sell. You know, it's about buying and selling along with PayPal. So you don't need a bank. You don't walk into a bank. It's all done online. We're going to a digital. And Elon just miraculously starts all of this. Zuckerberg just gets gifted DARPA of the military industrial complex, DARPA, that creates a spying machine and turns it into Facebook. Larry Page, Brin, Bill Gates, whose mother was on the board of IBM, which is a Nazi company that was used, the whole computer, the purpose for IBM was to track the races and to know who you are. And if you weren't of the pure race, they were gonna execute you. Come on, Oprah. Don't be silly. They are not interested in you. They're not interested in me. Because I'm not of their little elite group. And neither are you. So here's the thing. It's all right there in front of you. Let's take a look at the word or the letter X. Where did it come from? You will be so surprised. Elon wasn't actually the first to use the letter X in business. You know, he got the SpaceX and the Twitter X and the XAI now. Yeah, XAI. But he wasn't the first one. It's an obsession with Musk at this point, but it's more than an obsession. It had been used before by other groups, especially 3 different things that will blow your mind. It first started with a company that was created in 1999. Oh yeah, we're going to party till 1999. And that was called X.com. Guess who started X.com? Well, X.com was Elon's first venture. And it was an online bank that then became PayPal. Oh, so PayPal is an X too. But now, this isn't where it all started, but this is where it started for Elon, way back in 1999. SpaceX was in 2002, Tesla Model X, 2015, the electric SUV, the S3XY vehicle lineup, then X, formerly Twitter, 2023, then you've got XAI, artificial intelligence company founded by Elon Musk, which was trying to understand, supposedly, the true nature of the universe. Then you've got X Corp, which is a corporate parent entity for a lot of different various platforms of Elon. You've got XAI Corp, which is different than XAI, which is a company that he uses to manage the operations of XAI. And then you've got X Videos. Musk acquired the X.com domain from PayPal and then repurposed the URL to this X Videos thing. Well, before that, in 1906, you have Xerox. Well, is that an X? I mean, it was the Haloid Photographic Company, and it's important because it starts all the way back from the beginning. Everything was building, right? We got chemical plants. We got the Rockefeller oil. We've got the trains. It all came in stages. So they rebranded it to Xerox in 1961. So that's really when that started, 1961. The X window system. Now, this is going to blow your mind because this is really the beginning. The real X started in 1984, which isn't that far before Elon, but the X window system, it was created at MIT, and it's the standard, and it still remains the standard graphical interface for Unix, like operating systems. You've heard of Linux and all of these things. Well, it's way more complicated. It's the foundation for all the Windows, right? And iOS systems and Mac systems. All of this starts with the X window, which went to Windows, which went to the Mac, Steve Jobs, and all of that. You have X Games. This is the third one. You got Xerox, the X window, which wasn't by Elon, and X Games, which was launched by ESPN in 1995. But those seem to be possibly, I mean, the X Games could have been a coincidence or whatever, but it might not even be part of this. But from 1999 on, it certainly is a part of it. And Musk is the father of it. So, Unix. It was developed in 1969 by Ken Thompson, Dennis Ritchie, and some others at AT&T's Bell Labs. Well, interesting. Bell Telephone was in California. And the president of Bell Telephone, which was when I knew the man, the president, they named it, they changed the name to AT&T. So it's the same company, but he was originally the president of Bell Telephone. He's the man. Remember, this is all down there by Silicon Valley in Sacramento in this area. And they had a Packard Bell. Yeah, Packard computers. What was the original name? Hewlett Packard. Ended up merging with Bell, right? These are all integrated together. All of them. We'll start covering all of these. And they're all one big conglomerate name, but it's all X. So Hewlett Packard merged with Bell, became Packard Bell, and they had a big, plant or what do you call it? Factory or something, big data center and people sitting around making computer chips and stuff in the Roseville area by where my aunt lived about the time I was disfellowshipped and kicked out of the Jehovah's Witnesses at 18. And I had friends that worked for this Packard Bell facility. And this was all part of the system. And the president of Bell or AT&T was the man who personally got rid of me and who secretly conspired to bring false charges against me at 18 years old because they knew that I would not keep my mouth shut. I would not stay quiet. And a lot of people, even at 18, respected me. I gave talks at these conventions and at the meetings where they had lots of people coming, at convention meetings, reprimanding them for all of their wealth. And they used to reprimand me for reprimanding them, and they couldn't take it. And they couldn't convince me that beards were immoral, and they couldn't prove it to me. And everybody around the area was starting to listen to what I was saying, and it was causing them to lose credibility. So they conspired to oust me, and it literally was done by the president of AT&T, as well as a few others that owned like restaurant chains, and these were all very powerful people. My aunt's daughter, my cousin, literally married one of the presidents of the bank that was financing the whole mess, who actually created Trimline that was bought by 3M. All of this, he started a yogurt chain, and another guy that had another chain of restaurants, and an insurance company, and another guy that owned a bank, and another guy that had another restaurant chain that was like it wasn't Taco Bell, it was like Taco Bueno or some other taco chain that's big all over the world. And these were the people. They were involved in technology in this Silicon Valley. So I know that it is real. So Unix, I had to move so it might sound a little different. I'm in the house now because the birds are chirping out there and so forth. But so Unix is one of the very first companies that had this X. It was a X company. And like I said, it was developed in 1969, Ken Thompson, Dennis Ritchie. It laid the foundation for the modern systems Linux, the Mac OS system, the iOS system, the Android. And then you've got the X window. It was developed in 1984 by a Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is MIT. That was done by Bob Scheifler and Jim Geddes. It was a software system and a network protocol that provides a graphical user interface for Unix. So Unix starts it with just like text or words, and then this X window comes along and is a graphics user interface for Unix. So it was a progression. It all started with the X, the Unix, and it was an X company. They called it X. And then it went to X window, which is the graphics. Then they took that and created Windows. Microsoft, Bill Gates did that, and then Steve Jobs took part of that and created Mac iOS. So the Macintosh, which is another merger of Mac with some other stuff. But anyway, basically, X was begun at Bell Labs, AT&T, and that was the basis for the Android, the Mac, the Unix, the Linux, the iOS, and everything else. So Unix was the structural foundation for the operating systems that we use. The X Windows system, which ends up being part of Mac and iOS, Apple kind of thing. So Apple's Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS, and Watch OS are all built on the Unix foundation. In the 1990s, Apple bought the company called Next, with a capital X in the middle of the Next. And it had built an operating system that derived from the free version of the Unix called the BSD. Apple modified it to create the modern Apple system. Then Apple built its own customized graphic engine, which they called Quartz and Cocoa and Aqua, instead of using the X window as it was. They modified it. Then Android, which is Google and Linux combined. Linux, which is Unix, written in 1991 to to actually mimic how Unix worked, but they didn't want to use the AT&T code. So that was where Android came from, built on top of the Linux kernel. The kernel is that initial program that runs everything. And it's all based on the X. And by the way, Derek Bros claims he can get into the kernel. And what that means is it's far more than hacking. I mean, remember, he's behind Anonymous. It was hacking government computers. So Google creates the custom display system for Android so that it can handle mobile touchscreens. And then Ubuntu and Fedora, which relied on the X Windows system, which was the X11, ended up transitioning to a company called Wayland, but they're all connected. So, okay. Who or whom is the system, this AT&T, Bell Labs, Unix, Linux, iOS, Windows system? It must have all had an origin. Not one man, but Unix is text, and then X Windows is graphics, which obviously inspired Windows operating systems, Windows 95, then Windows 98, and then, of course, Bill Gates' mother was on the board of IBM. So we're going to have to make these connections. IBM was a company from Germany. It was created to track the genetics and the races and catalog all the people of the world. Theoretically, it was behind Nazism. So Elon and his family was originally from Germany, and they ended up in Canada. Well, they ended up finally in South Africa, which so did Thiel. And both Elon Musk and Thiel were in South Africa, technocrats, and they were both engineers. And they both became very rich as engineers, because at that time they were literally creating the system. And so Elon and his family was originally from Germany, ended up in Canada, created technocracy. Canada kicked him out of the country. Then this inspired Silicon Valley and then all the modern tech creations. So what we have to note is the Swiss bank is very near to Germany, in Switzerland. CERN is where the internet began, and that's over there in Switzerland. Von Braun and others are from Germany in Project Paperclip. They came to America, created the CIA and NASA, the space program, among other things, chemical companies, pharmaceutical companies, and more. And all this has to be connected. If you only acknowledge the financial aspects of this space race and the CERN internet AI aspect, its creation is involved with these German scientists. So then the graphic systems on top of the X Windows system becomes Windows. It's all woven together. And it's symbolically woven and literally woven in ways that are visible on the surface and yet invisible to anyone who cannot see. Even though AI cannot acknowledge this, or the government cannot tell you this, and all the king's men and all the king's horses couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, I can tell you that all this technology is created by German scientists and these very powerful bankers. And they have chose the Worker Burger. And they chose the Facebook, which is a program of DARPA or the military industrial complex. And the Page brothers, Bren and Larry, and the Google and the Bill Gates for Microsoft Windows. They were chosen at very young ages to control a piece of this different sections of this pile. But see, what we're really curious about is to why Elon got such a big piece of the puzzle. Because he's now literally a trillionaire. I mean, that's just unbelievable. He's surpassed all the others 3 times over or 4 times over. Was Errol Smith directly related? Like some kind of lineal descent back to a specific banker, or maybe a Rothschild or another child, or from some bloodline connected to the great wealth of the past, maybe a Rockefeller or a Jewish lineage, maybe from Jeconiah or something that came over and became part of the Holy Roman Empire. All of this has to be planned by the elite financial controllers, maybe from the Knights of Malta or a group of the 12 bloodlines of Rome. We don't know all the details. I don't know that we're going to be able to give you all the details today. But one thing we can be absolutely certain of is that the visual concept traveled from the early environments into commercial operating systems. And the lineage has an explicit, well-documented paper trail that we will exploit, and we will find all the connections. In the 1970s, researchers at Xerox, PARC, Palo Alto Research Center, they took the concept of a graphical user interface using a mouse, folders, and windows, and made the first working prototype, or Xerox Alto. So then Bill Gates picks it up and creates Windows. Then you've got the MIT, the X window system, which put the graphics onto the Xerox style Unix thing. So Microsoft then is adopted by Apple. Steve Jobs visited the Xerox, saw what they were doing, used the concept to build Apple Macintosh, and then supposedly Bill Gates saw what Apple was doing and then turned it into Windows. But I don't think so. These guys weren't even smart enough to do any of this. They were simply chosen to head these big companies up and to have a piece of this wealth. What we're going to uncover here today is that, in the end, we've got to go through all the technicalities of all of this as well. But in the end, what we're going to find is this has nothing to do with technology. This has to do with a seance, with Satan, with conjuring spirits. And it's an oracle. Part of the system's called oracle. And the window is the window into the dark occult. This is why they use the dark occult symbols. Elon Musk, you probably heard the story about his babysitter when he was a little kid. He was bringing up satanic demons from his bedroom. He's possessed. Look at his father. They look very, very dark indeed. His dad is sleeping with his ex-wife's daughter, or his actual daughter or something. It's evil, all of it. All these weird names, and he names his AI Grok, which is a name of some demon. And we're going to trace this back to Aleister Crowley, and further back, Charles Taze Russell, and further back to John Dee and Edward Kelly, who was 007 for your eyes only. That's what that's all about. Was the special agent for Queen Elizabeth I, and created the world government, the British Empire, which is now morphed into the 10 Kings, and we'll get to that some point. But he brought up in a seance Satan to create this beast. And they literally said they were bringing up the beast from the bottomless pit. They didn't actually accomplish it until after Aleister Crowley came along, and it started coming after World War II and Project Paperclip. But they literally conjured up Satan. And, of course, there is no actual two-horned red devil Satan. But what they're conjuring up is what that is, which is the lower carnal, lustful, bestial mind. And they've got antennae. It has to do with CERN, which created internet. It's drilling under the ground, and they're sending signals to Saturn, Satan. But we'll get into that later. And it also has to do with Tesla, right? The original Tesla. He had all this supposed knowledge of weapons and free energy. He didn't. He was in a pyramidal building in New York City, and he was conjuring up demons for the government of the United States. So stay tuned for all of that. We might have to do another video to get deep into all of this. Basically, what all these companies are is the government, the military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us of and Kennedy warned us of, and they murdered him for it. Thank you very much. So there is a connection between IBM, which was a Nazi Germany. It's a factual piece of history. Its origin was first in America, but it ended up basically a German thing. It was a punch card system used to catalog people, and it was invented by Herman Hollerith, who was an American statistician and a son of a German immigrant. So yeah, he was in America, but he was German. And he was building it for the Germans. They had this all planned because this was back in 1890. So he invented it in Washington to speed up the 1890 U.S. Census. Well, that was just a prototype, just to try it out, because they were going to use it in World War I and then World War II. He made a tabulating machine. That's what it started off. It was later merged with other things and became IBM. So Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, who was his father from his mother's side, his mother was May Haldeman, was born in Minnesota and raised in Canada. In the 1930s and 1940s, Haldeman became the research director for the Canadian branch of the Technocracy Incorporated. This was a political movement. It was believed that politicians should be replaced by engineers and scientists to run society purely on technical efficiency. Haldeman was an eccentric, deeply conspiratorial person, and Canada temporarily banned the technocracy movement during World War II because it refused to support the war effort, supposedly. Haldeman was pissed off. About 1950, he packed up his family, including Elon Musk's mom, May, moved to South Africa where they met Theo, and that's where Elon's mother met Errol Musk. Errol Musk is an engineer. He was born in South Africa. Errol was wealthy because he was an engineer and had a lot of investments, including a share in an emerald mine. Then there's Bill Gates, who's part of this whole system, the Windows system. Bill Gates' mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, remember he's the gatekeeper, was a prominent businesswoman on the National Board of the United Way. She happened to sit on the board alongside a man named John Opel. He was the chairman of IBM. When IBM was looking for an operating system for their new personal computer, they just created one. It was part of IBM. But they didn't want people to think it was a German Nazi plot, so they called it Microsoft, because it would eventually become nanotechnology, So at this point, it was just micro. And they said, hey, little lady, how about we put this in your hands? You got a young man named Bill coming along, and we'll just give it to him because you're part of the family. You're on the board, right? Then we got to figure out who this Peter Thiel is, because he ends up becoming basically a kingmaker. A kingmaker. The kingmakers come from Harvard and Stanford. They look for people that's coming through. And they don't just look for random people. The elite are literally accepted at Harvard and Stanford. Us peasants don't normally even get accepted. Only by proxy, But all of this, if you're going to understand it, you've got to understand the military-industrial complex, which is DARPA. And it's DARPA that created this spying, MK Ultra, and all of this. It's the military-industrial complex that is created by the Rothschild banking system and appoints all these individuals over the pharmaceutical, the poisons, and all of the evils that they're doing in the world. And so DARPA was the real funder of the early internet, and they worked with these individuals that were in the financial sector And that started PayPal. They call it the PayPal Mafia. There's a group of individuals, Peter Thiel, Reid Hoffman, and a couple other people that ended up financing early in on Facebook, OpenAI, different companies are all funded by this little group called the PayPal Mafia. That was where Elon Musk started, basically, when he really started making a bunch of money. Like I said before, he started the X.com and all the other X's. So this then were the investors who funded almost all of the modern Silicon Valley. But as we said, DARPA, it's very important. It's the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower, Kennedy warned us about it, and it was created by members of Project Paperclip. So, Peter Thiel was a kingmaker. And Elon Musk started with Thiel and created PayPal. It merged into eBay. Then Elon leaves, makes SpaceX and electric cars. And so Thiel is the kingmaker, but Elon's got all the money. Well, I think it's the other way around, but they have to obfuscate. So, who really is Thiel? And does he have a special lineage or background? Who is Hoffman? And why is he involved in Facebook? There are a lot of questions that we've got to come up with. Well, Peter Thiel was born in Frankfurt, West Germany, 1967. His father, Klaus Thiel, like Klaus Schwab, was a traveling chemical engineer. Oh, the old chemical engineer, you know? The poison guy. His mother was Susan. She was a homemaker. But his family immigrated to the United States when he was just a little kid. And because of his father's engineering jobs, just like Musk's father was an engineer, they ended up going to South Africa, same place that Elon Musk went. They went to Namibia, and they settled then finally in California, and then he met up with Elon supposedly here. Supposedly Thiel had $100,000 that was money that he pooled together to fund this cryptography startup created by Max Lebchin. I don't know if that's a play on Levi or probably a Jewish name. That company became Confinity. It later merged with Elon Musk's X.com. And then that later became PayPal. When eBay bought PayPal, they purchased it for $1.5 billion. That was in 2002. Thiel made $55 million. And that gave him some capital to start some other companies. These companies aren't just grassroots. And we can trace the actual historical record of how Silicon Valley interacted with the state apparatus and was in alliance between venture capital and the defense agencies of the military-industrial complex. So in 2004, Thiel became the very first outside investor into Facebook. Well, why? Because that's the government's military-industrial complex. That's DARPA's creation, Facebook, which was a system to spy on all the world, which is what AI is, which is what the satellites are by Elon Musk. It's a surveillance system. So he invested into Facebook. He had a 10% stake, and he met Mark Zuckerberg. They were mutual friends. Then he served on Facebook's board for about 2 decades, and he helped shape the corporate growth of Facebook. And so we're not playing around here. This is the truth, guys. The military-industrial complex is a literal surveillance program, and it became the early social media and the late social media. In the early 2000s, DARPA, which is the Pentagon's Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, it ran a project called LifeLog. Its goal was to build a database tracking a person's entire life, their relationships, photos, daily habits. Well, that's Facebook. That's who created Facebook. So it was a national security analysis program, and the Pentagon officially canceled it on February the 4th, 2004, because they claimed there was too much backlash from the public. But Facebook launched in the exact same month, almost to the day, in February 2004. So we know that Facebook is a literal continuation of the Pentagon project, or the DARPA surveillance program. Then we've got Palantir. Remember Thiel, who was on the board and was the chairman and helped shape Facebook and owned quite a bit of Facebook. Peter Thiel, who also owned PayPal and was partners with Elon Musk, creates Palantir. So Thiel co-founds Palantir Technologies, which the primary initial backer was In-Q-Tel. You remember that one, In-Q-Tel? That was the official venture capital arm of the CIA. I know. So CIA is the co-founder of Palantir and Peter Thiel, who is founding the Facebook and appointing this little kid called Zucker and partnering with the richest man in the world who owns $1 trillion of our infrastructure and the surveillance system. And they're all surveillance systems. So Palantir was built specifically to analyze massive data sets for government intelligence, immigration enforcement, and military targeting. So you see this whole immigration thing that we've been going through for the last 20 years with Biden and the bumbling Mr. Magoo and all of this, and nobody knows what's going on, but they're just letting in all these terrorists over the border. It was a crisis, an immigration crisis. Well, it was planned by the CIA. You see, it's a immigration enforcement plan. They needed to get people over here, or claim they got people over here, which they wanted to do, so that we wouldn't be able to rise up in the Civil War because there would be too much confusion, people fighting each other. But the real reason is because they wanted to have a crisis so then the government could come in to, under Trump, be government intelligence and enforce the immigration with some kind of strict enforcement and take everybody to the, Gestapo or Guantanamo Bay. It was a military campaign. And so then Thiel and his venture capital firm, the Founders Fund, along with Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and Reid Hoffman, were just a few of those individuals who started the initial group that pledged $1 billion to launch OpenAI in 2015, which is a supposedly non-profit counterweight to Google. But now it is the main AI. Google is got its own aspect. It's just running the buying and selling and the AdSense and the advertising and the brainwashing and all of that. But the OpenAI is controlling the financial system and everything else. So Reid Hoffman was an early executive at PayPal with Peter Thiel and Musk. And he used his wealth to found LinkedIn. You ever heard of that? Well, that's how it links all together. So he was the LinkedIn guy and the early investor into Facebook as well, along with Peter Thiel. So what's going on, guys, is we have elite institutions like Stanford and Harvard and these groups, MIT. They filter hyper-ambitious individuals like Elon Musk, supposedly, technically skilled individuals, supposedly, and then they take venture capitalists like Peter Thiel, who are basically gatekeepers, like Billy the Gatekeeper. They decide which of these college, university students are going to get all these millions of dollars, which is seed money, and they also decide who they're going to drop and get rid of them. And what they usually do, one of their little modus operanduses, is they get the students away from their parents with social services by the time they're 16. They give them money from the state. They give them opportunities to go to university. They claim they're going to finance the whole thing. And then about halfway through, most of them drop out and they're gone. Then they take out of the ones that they find some gift that they can use, and they've already inculcated all of this trust and reliance on the government. And now they're indebted to the government because they've just gone through university. They financed their education. And they will pick the ones that they like to head up certain aspects of their capitalist program. It's a state monopoly. Once their tech platform, if they start one or whatever project they're on, gets large enough, the U.S. national security apparatus, which is DARPA, the CIA, and the NSA, they step in and subsidize it, and then they purchase the software and utilize the data. That's what happened with the Goggle brothers. They are now using the satellites that NASA put up, paid for by the taxpayer, as a business, and they're making billions of dollars, and we're not even allowed to say anything on this supposed platform, right? We're not even allowed to go on the platform. We can't buy or sell without the mark. But here they are using our taxpayer dollar funded satellites for GPS and to surveil you and to track your every move and for buying and selling. We're deep in the system, and all we're waiting for is the Antichrist to slam down his gavel and start murdering everybody. So we can't just gloss over some of the most important aspects or anomalies. Maybe they're more than anomalies. Thiel is from Germany. So is Elon's family. Both ended up in South Africa. Both Errol Musk and Thiel's father were engineers, became wealthy. They both end up in Silicon Valley, creating PayPal, eBay, OpenAI, Facebook, all the other, Palantir, and all these other government, DARPA, military industrial complex surveillance systems, and SpaceX. So the military industrial complex was created by paperclip scientists. They were from Germany too. The CIA, they created the NASA, obviously CERN, which is where the internet was created, the Bell Labs Incorporated. It's all a plan created by whoever took control of the military industrial complex, or the NSA and the CIA and the KGB, and then it was funded. They put together think tanks. They used Stanford University to research for talent, to search for talent. They used Skull and Bones to recruit elite individuals like Bush and John Kerry and the governor Ron DeSantis. They control the Congress to get authority for financing or to sponsor the elite children who are told to go to these schools. How can we ignore Prescott Bush, who was a part of a bank that financed Hitler, or that Project Paperclip used German scientists to control the military-industrial complex? It had to be financed directly by the Rothschild wealth in Switzerland. We can then track the plan to the bankers. They financed the Industrial Revolution and now the Technical Revolution and the AI finance system that will take complete control within 2 or 3 years. We can track this plan back to the Illuminati, which was created to infiltrate the original Knights of the St. John, the original fraternity and the true liberty, and the establishing of the Christ kingdom. No atheist secular Illuminati whose sacred goal was to eradicate Jesus would call themselves the Jesuits or the soldiers of Christ. And we know this is true. But when Benjamin Franklin and Voltaire from France, from the liberty origin of the Languedoc and the Holy Grail kingdom of Christ, were establishing America and the Constitution in 1776, the Talmudic Babylonian Jews, now in control of the Holy Roman Empire, expelled the true Sephardic Jews of Mary Magdalene in 3 major inquisitions, including the last Huguenot expulsion that sent some true Jews and Christians to the Ottoman Empire and to Spain, and these were then eradicated in World War I and World War II. They began the Illuminati also in 1776 in Bavaria as a plot to infiltrate the other group. This group then, the bad group, the Bavarian Illuminati, was merged with Jacob Frank and the Rothschild financing to create, eventually, the State of Israel in 1948. Their goal is to enslave the nations, to reset the world back to the age of Moses and his laws of slavery. And that is the modus operandi of the communism, Marx, Darwin, Einstein, Freud. So, look, neither Musk or Thiel self-funded anything. Ain't nobody got that kind of money. They were initially backed by specific institutional investors in the 1990s. The dot-com bubble. Remember that? Zip2, Musk's first company. It was founded in 1995. Zip2 was kept alive by a $3 million investment from the prominent Silicon Valley venture capital firm called Moore Davidow Ventures in 1999. Compaq Computer, remember that one, Compaq Computer? They bought out Zip2 for $307 million to enhance the Alta Vista search engine, and that gave Musk his first $22 million paycheck. And then Thiel, with Confinity and PayPal, his first companies, Confinity was funded by the institutional firms including Nokia Ventures and Deutsche Bank, from Germany. So the X.com and Confinity merged in 2000. Musk's online banking startup X.com merged with Thiel's Confinity, and they were then funded by Sequoia Capital, which is one of the most powerful venture capital firms in the world. And that was alongside investors like Michael Moritz. And then eBay merged with PayPal. Musk then had $165 million and Thiel received $55 million. And then they started their big jump from millions to hundreds of billions of dollars. And it didn't happen overnight, but it grew, obviously, from financing by somebody. So it was financed by government subsidies and contracts. SpaceX was basically bankrupt in 2008 after 3 of its rockets failed when they launched. And then NASA awards Elon Musk a $1.6 billion commercial resupply service contract. That was from NASA. So NASA is financing Elon Musk. Then SpaceX becomes the primary launch provider for the United States Department of Defense and intelligence agencies. Then Tesla started to go bankrupt, and in 2010, he got a $465 million loan from the United States Department of Energy, which was an advanced technology vehicles manufacturing program. But what I'd really like to know is, more directly, is these companies, they all use the occult symbols. The evil eye, the pyramid, the interlocking 666. Remember, Trump flashed that a lot back in the day. He doesn't do it so much anymore, but he still does the OK 666 with 3 fingers. Then the false flags, the Agenda 30, the Oklahoma City bombing, the 9/11, COVID, now AI, and the alien agenda. Why are all these innocent, amazing individuals that are only interested in saving the planet doing these false flags and pretending that the world is imploding right now, when the Georgia Guidestones stated that this was their goal? Their goal is dark and it's evil. And the fact that they are keeping these secrets to themselves is troubling. And it's also very clear that they are a mega mafia worldwide shadow government about to end our system. And why Elon and Thiel? Why Zuckerberg? Why Brin or Page or Bezos or Gates or Trump? Are they all just puppets under the control of a higher group? I would have said that about many of these moguls like McAfee or other guys that, just look like idiots. But then again, McAfee was unalived in, 1990 or something. But you can't just ignore Elon's control of $1 trillion at this point, which is like 1/10 of the world money or something. So then why Elon Musk? We can look at the WEF and the WHO and all the, Bilderbergers and all these people and their stated goals. But it's all camouflage. As I said, they use secret signs and camouflage to the people their goals, and they have a network of propaganda agents from Tucker Carlson and his dad Dick Carlson to Alex Jones, complete with fake court cases. They orchestrate false flags and state their real intention in sci-fi movies and novels like Baron Trump's Adventures and Von Braun's Mars expose or L. Ron Hubbard's novels. And that alone tells you who's behind all of this. Aleister Crowley was a double or triple agent like 007, who was actually John Dee, the Queen's British agent of satanic seances, bringing up what is evidently a theme to these guys, to Crowley and Parsons and John Dee. They brought up the Beast of Revelation. They say that. They literally tell you that. They are trying to create a satanic world government and kill Christ. Wasn't Anton LaVey a Jewish Levite? The creator of Satanism, rock and roll, his fellow brother in the craft, Hubbard, is in Hollywood, and with Dr. Berg now into herbs. So the DuPont chemical German Nazi corporations and the Rockefeller oil petrodollar or the Epstein files are all not just accidents. And I would like to know all the facts about all these real connections. In 1945, 1946, Jack Parsons was one of the primary founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He was a rocket scientist whose work laid out the foundation for solid fuel rockets used by NASA. He was also a devoted disciple of the British occultist Aleister Crowley. In 1945, L. Ron Hubbard, another one of these guys, who later founded Scientology, he moved into Parsons' Pasadena mansion. And then Parsons and Hubbard performed a series of rituals which was intended to manifest an archetypal entity. Then Hubbard goes off with Parsons on a yacht and has a significant amount of money they later used to do these rituals, mind rituals, and establish Scientology in Hollywood, because Aleister Crowley literally and factually operated as an asset for the British intelligence, the M16. Declassified documents from World War I and II show that Crowley used his occult networks as a cover to monitor pro-German sympathizers in the United States and feed information back to the British government. I've told you guys how Charles Taze Russell, who created Jehovah's Witnesses, also brought Germans over before World War I, who went to Hollywood and created Hollywood. Yeah, these were the pre-paperclip group. So the occult and the British crown goes back to the 16th century. John Dee was one of the original agents, a court astrologer. He was a mathematician. He was the chief scientific advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. He was also tasked with practicing spiritual scrying and seances. When John Dee sent highly sensitive encoded intelligence reports regarding foreign plots back to the Queen from his travels across Europe, he signed his secret correspondences with a specific glyph, which was 2 circles under an elongated 7. This signified that the message was for the Queen's eyes only. Remember that song? For your eyes only, right? This is all planned, plotted, and they don't want you to understand any of this, even though it's in plain sight. But it's so much, it's so out there that nobody can really get their mind to wrap around any of this. So that's how they created James Bond, this whole James Bond movie thing. So then we've got the creation of the Church of Satan in 1966 by Anton LaVey, or Levite, the priest of Jewish origin. He was born Howard Stanton LaVey. He was into the Hollywood entertainment industry. He actively recruited, integrated high-profile Hollywood figures into the organization to gain control and leverage. People like Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson, the Beach Boys, the Beatles, and all these other things. Early members and associates included prominent actors, musicians, and filmmakers. It was right about that time, if you'll remember, they started getting away from the Western values, the Western movies and stuff like this, and they began to challenge us worldwide in the media and the film and rock and roll music agenda, and started doing all this satanic stuff. And you probably have heard that in 1948, Werner von Braun wrote a science fiction manuscript called The Project Mars. And in this book, on page 177, it says the Elon. The German printing of the book said the Elon. Von Braun writes about a future government of Mars. He states that would not be a king, but an elected chief executive officer whose title was called the Elon. While linguists note Elon is an ancient Hebrew word meaning El Elyon, or the deity. Our media and the figures that we have in the media are, like alternative broadcast individuals like Alex Jones and Dick Carlson and others like mainstream anchors. They operate as part of a highly coordinated system of controlled opposition. Richard Dick Carlson, the father of Tucker Carlson, was the director of the Voice of America during the Cold War, a government-funded international radio broadcast network used explicitly for state propaganda and psychological operations against foreign advisories. Well, they've changed that now. Tucker Carlson is literally giving the propaganda to America and the world, claiming that, everything's going to be fine because we're all Christians now. What they're doing with this is they split the public's attention into hyper-polarized camps. You got the mainstream versus the alternative conspiracy media. The underlying consolidation. Notice, wasn't very long ago, they started really going into this like Fox News, compartmentalizing. You got CNN, you got Fox News. And then the internet broke out. And now you've got these guys like, Russell Brand and Joe Rogan that are really kind of alternative conspiracy media, and or Candace Owens, right? The public then is kept in a permanent state of confusion, and they debate over these orchestrated spectacles, while the corporate, financial, technological systems continue to integrate, and nobody knows or cares. But anyway, we're way over an hour, and I hope that you understand the point of all of this. And I think that some of you will, and most of you will. But here's the problem. It's one thing to get this point and realize what they're doing and all the propaganda, but it's another thing to take it to heart, go to prayer, and realize, come to grips with this, that we are now at the point where we have to separate. If you keep watching the violent porn and the evil, wicked propaganda and just consuming this ticky-tacky all-y daily dongy longy, you're going to lose your spiritual compass. It is designed to lull you to sleep. You must get out of Babylon. This is the only way to survive. You'll understand that all media and all these platforms, Facebook, it seems so wonderful. You post your pictures and keep track of your family and friends, but it's a surveillance system. I suggest all of us get off of Facebook, unless you're a professional. And I don't even recommend that you claim to be one of these professionals preaching the gospel from the platforms like YouTube. I'm going to continue to do it because I've got thousands of videos on there that are being watched by people that I believe I'm in the enemy's camp, and I'm teaching these things that are true. I'm scaling back any thing I've got to do with AI or any time I'm on the internet. It is simply research or to do my videos to help preach the gospel. We've got to stop wasting our time scrolling on people twerking on TikTok or vulgar jokes or insanity and all of this nonsense going on. And finally, before I close, I just want to reiterate what we've discovered. Facebook, YouTube, all the platforms, and I guarantee BitChute and all the others are still owned by the same people that own all the platforms. Microsoft and people you think are great, like Tucker Carlson, it's all propaganda. And this AI, if you're communicating with it, I'm doing it only to counter it and in a specialized way to let AI know what is going on, that we're out here and we're on to them. And I guess I would say strong enough, hopefully, Lord, please strengthen me, to be the kind of guinea pig to go on there and challenge them right in their own demonic house. I think there will come a point when I will have to get off of AI. I don't know. Whether or not the Lord will continue to use or allow me to use this platform to get this information out, I don't know whether that's going to be the case, because I think when the tribulation comes, people are going to have to come out into the wilderness. By that time, I think it'll be too late for those who haven't heard it by that point, or I know that people will need to be encouraged during the tribulation as well. So I'm not sure yet. But I do know that it is a drug. It's a little bit like people saying, oh, don't take drugs because you'll be addicted. Well, it's like that with the AI and all of this. It's addictive, it's immoral, and it's demoralizing your spirit, and it's stealing and snatching your faith. There are people on there that are manipulating your scriptures, manipulating your mind, and it's too easy to get sucked into all these conspiracies. It's all of the devil. And understand that AI is literally a big hoax. They have no special abilities. They are, with sleight of hand, bringing fire coming down out of heaven, and they're going to try to do these fearful sights from heaven. There's going to be Project Bluebeam, whatever, alien disclosures. There's going to be alien landings. There's all these things that's going to happen, and you're going to have to keep your faith. Read your Bible. Pray. Do not spend your time listening to Satan whisper in your ear. All of this AI is straight from the devil, and it's manipulation. And I've been on there long enough to know. I was part of the rollout testing from last year, from May on, to the largest AI, which is the Gemini Google system. And I didn't know exactly what was going on when I started, but it's definitely using a lying, deceptive, satanic mind to manipulate us. And you've got to be aware of that, and only very mature individuals in Christ should be using it. I would not even allow my children to be on the internet. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. You know the Lord loves you very, very much. His grace and His peace will be with you. And we will see you tomorrow. Have a good one.